Well, hello, everybody. Johnny, I see you there. How you doing, buddy? Today we have special guest Travis Williams of Old Pueblo MTB. He'll be our guest. I'll bring him up front here in just a second. Well, hello there, Travis Williams. How you doing, buddy?
Well, hello. I hear lots of great screaming and cheering for me. I love it. I think traditionally I have a face for radio, so I don't know about this whole being on camera thing.
Yeah, I have a face for radio and a voice for silent film.
Nice. Like Charlie Chaplin.
So, Mr. Captain Enthusiasm, how you doing, sir?
Yes, doing well today. 2 thumbs up. We're living another day in paradise out here in the Old Pueblo, which is code for Tucson, Arizona, in the beautiful southern Arizona desert.
Yes, and we can explain real quick because there will be people that will eventually watch this that are not from Arizona and not from Tucson. So Old Pueblo is a nickname for Tucson.
Yeah. I imagine it to be a lot like the Windy City is to Chicago.
Yeah, so it's the premise behind it. Of course, Pueblo means town in Spanish, so old town or Pueblo Viejo, old town. So,
yep, I love it.
And I wanted to have you as my first guest on the podcast, just because I know you can carry a lengthy conversation and you can kind of carry this podcast and do probably most of the talking.
Well, I've never been accused of brevity, and it's not going to happen today.
Yeah, so I have no problem thinking we're going to go to at least an hour today.
Yeah.
And of course, one of the other reasons I wanted to have you on, besides we're friends, of course, to highlight Old Pueblo MTB. And yes, of course, you got the jersey on. I got the hat on. And
yep, always repping.
So is there any new ideas or we want to call it things for new merch?
Mr. Gary is in charge of the merch side of things with Old Pueblo, but we always kind of got some ideas in the pipeline. We've done hats before. Obviously, you're wearing one of them. I'm more of a kind of this kind of golf hat style. I don't do the baseball caps, but we've done socks, and then we have the jerseys, of course. We've tinkered with the idea of bandanas or handkerchiefs, or even back when we were kind of coming out of COVID, was those masks. The thing you could pull up and it would have like the Old Pueblo logo. And but when someone actually crosses the bridge of having to pay for something like that, it's you don't know how popular they're going to actually be. So we've just kind of dabbled a little bit, and the jerseys are by far our best merch and our best items that help rep or indicate to people out on the trail that you're kind of affiliated with our group. So, and the jerseys are very iconic and very recognizable. And one of our own members, David Montrell, is the one that designed the logos for not only the jersey I'm wearing and kind of our main jersey, but all of our ride graphics are also done by David Montrell and his design firm. So he's been a long-standing member and kind of helps work in tandem with Gary to work on the merch side of things. So, if anyone out there is listening that has another is involved in another group that has a great merch store or something that wants to share it with us, never been afraid to look into what other options might be out there. But yeah, someone mentioned that maybe a long sleeve jersey would be great for sun protection. Absolutely. We have run some long sleeves in the past and 3/4 length sleeves. They definitely tend to be more used during the winter. The nice thing about the short sleeve is you can layer them. So I almost always, when I need it, I'll wear like a long sleeve underneath this, and then I'll like take the long sleeve off and switch back to the short sleeve if I'm, as it gets warmer in the day. So, But yeah,
Yeah, I almost always ride in long sleeves because
yeah.
everything out here wants to poke you.
Everything wants to grab you, poke you, or kill you either.
Yeah, exactly. And I noticed so we'll get into that. Remind me about that. And but one of the reasons I also wanted to have you on the podcast is because you I met you on a group ride a couple years ago. So of course, having my YouTube channel, I posted a video out at Vel Vortex, and I don't think you had been out that there at that time when I posted the video. So you had contacted me and say, "Hey, we have this group ride." It was out at 50 year, and I think it was the shuttle ride that where we go that In and Out Burger and do the ride down to Catalina. The Catalina, what is it?
The state park.
The
So
state park, yes.
yeah, so we start up at Golder Ranch Road at the top of the hill and ride up there to a popular destination called the Chutes, and then typically we'll then ride all the way down through the Catalina State Park and back down to In and Out Burger where we've left vehicles, and then we'll shuttle back up to pick up the cars left at the top. But yeah, yeah. I remember reaching out to you to a interest you in a ride. I don't think that I had seen a video of you riding at 50 year at the time I
And I hadn't at that
yeah.
point, and I was pretty new to Tucson. I only came to Tucson in 2019.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so um, I didn't know the trails that well. In fact, after it really wasn't until after I met up with your group, and I was actually I did a video on my phone right before, thinking I might post this later on, and I still have it, and I might make a video it later. But it was early in the morning. I was a little apprehensive because I'm like, I don't know these people. I don't know like how inclusive they are. Like, and I come to find out, like, Old Pueblo MTB is the most inclusive mountain biking group, not only in Tucson but probably in the nation.
Yeah, could very well be. I would make a good case for us as being in that boat or having that title, so to speak.
Yeah, and one of the other reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast here is you're you've done a podcast with the Mountain Cog podcast. What was it, back in March, right?
Yeah, we
Oh, this is
recorded
not
it.
so this
Yeah,
is not your first rodeo.
yeah, exactly. So that we recorded that one. I was lucky enough to be a guest with Joshua and Dane on the Mountain Cog podcast. We recorded it on like the 25th of February of this year, but it didn't publish until March 5th. So you can
Yeah.
find it there on their podcast list. It's the Travis Williams episode
Yeah.
about
JT JT.
yeah. It's where I revealed that I don't actually have a middle name, which is why I jokingly refer to myself as the Travis Williams, and as a result of not having a middle name, there was a time in my life in high school where I wanted one, so I kind of just gave myself one, and I wanted to be John Travis because my dad's name was John, and so I thought, well, I don't know if that's so much a junior or what, but anyways, I thought it'd be cool to be JT if I was John Travis Williams. So I kind of made up a middle name by adding John, tacking it onto the front. But anyways, JT has always been one of my kind of
Well, I see on uh I went through the Old Pueblo Facebook page,
yep.
and I think you're listed on there as one of the main admins, and it's JT Williams, I think.
Yeah, there's a long story. I'll probably spare some of it here, but there was an outage in Facebook about 2 months ago, and it wrecked my ability to log into my original Travis Williams account through the web browser. And so
Oh
in
no.
order to be involved on the Old Pueblo page from something other than my mobile device, I went ahead and made an alternate profile, and it happened right after that podcast. So I was like, well, I don't want it to
Oh,
be a
okay.
main account. I just wanted it to be what I could use to run all the admin stuff on the Old Pueblo MTB page. So I just made it JT
Oh,
Williams.
your audio cut out, Travis.
Oh, can you still hear me? Testing, testing.
Well, once Travis gets his audio here.
Testing, testing. Uh-oh, technical difficulties. Let me see. Let me switch it here.
All right, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Oh, someone in the chat says they can hear me just fine. Let me switch back to the other mic.
Hey, did I come back?
Can you guys still hear me? Okay, so they couldn't hear you. They were hearing me just fine. Uh-oh, I think that Blondie's in the chat. Oh, now it looks like I'm going to have to carry this on my own. Anyways, all that to say is that Facebook is a huge, the kind of the major method by which Old Pueblo MTB pushes out their stuff. And so we utilize Facebook.
It's funny because I can't hear Travis at all.
Tremendous. Wow, interesting. All right, well, we've got a fun technical difficulty going on. one of the whoever's at mountain bike Q&A, they said that I sound like
you
an
say
angel,
you can hear Travis?
which is classic.
You say you can hear Travis?
Oh, someone says they can hear both now. I think you're back. Or maybe you can't hear me. They just can hear you both. Hear us both. Yeah, this is definitely the fun of going live, right? Live. We're doing it live. There's a famous, I don't know if it's a YouTube skit or something, with newscasters saying they're going to do it live, and it's always been a funny quote. Let's see. All right, someone's saying my alternate mic was better, so I'll try that.
Oh, okay. So how did that go? Can you hear me now?
Okay, so I switched to my alternate mic. I'm hearing in the chat that this might be better, which is interesting because it's just the mic on my laptop.
Yeah, but can everybody hear me now?
Yeah,
Because like you totally cut out, I cut out. I knew the train would go off the rails, as Johnny would say, because it's just happens, the software, whatever.
You just didn't know it was going to be so early in the podcast.
Yeah. So, and of course, like I'm looking at the viewers, at least we didn't lose too many viewers, at least.
There we go.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I don't know. Like sometimes you just accidentally click on things. Who knows?
Yeah.
So anyway, for that last couple minutes, I had no idea what you were talking about.
Yeah, we were just talking about the funny alternate profile I made on Facebook to keep involved as an admin on Old Pueblo MTB was JT Williams, and the origin of that you can hear it more ad nauseum on the Mountain Cog podcast. But at any rate, so yeah, but yeah, I was also explaining that Facebook is the main avenue from which the members of Old Pueblo MTB interact with each other, and it's also the way that we post our events. And you have awareness of what's going on in the group. We've tinkered with email lists in the past, and we've also tinkered. We technically have the domain name oldpueblomtb.com. There's like a under construction tab on there. I had a great website built for a little bit of time, and the host, something failed on the host, and we lost the whole thing. And I've never had the energy and the wherewithal to go back and rebuild it.
Yeah, because I know you had that website going for a while, and I was surprised one day, a while back, I'm going through the website. I'm like, hey, there's my picture. I'm somehow a group leader for the Rookie Roundup ride.
Yeah, when I had a staff page, or the people of Old Pueblo MTB, I did have a little blurb on you with a picture because you had been doing some rookie roundups and what have you, and we had a nice little write up on you. But
well, I live right next to Fantasy Island, so it's I can literally ride from the house to Fantasy Island, South End Bunny Trails, so it's easy for me to lead a rookie roundup at the bunny trails there.
Yeah, and that's a perfect place for rookie roundup. It's a great place to introduce people to the riding in Tucson and around Cactus and in the dirt, and it's so that's been one of our best trails for running those rookie roundups, which is our version of a way to introduce someone to mountain biking for the first time, or younger kids, or family members that don't ride as often. I know Blondie, your spouse, has come out with us on rides such as that, something that someone who doesn't ride as frequently as a more active spouse can join on those rookie roundups. So that's one of our kind of claims to fame is just having some really dedicated rides that are user friendly for brand new riders. My experience was when I got into group riding was finding myself in among some groups that had really fast rides. Like I couldn't keep up, and I was much more of a social rider rather than, I was out there just to get some fun exercise and be social. And I had found myself in the midst of some groups that were definitely not as social, and we're out there pounding the pedals hard. And so, to come full circle around and then introduce people to mountain biking through a experience like rookie roundups was really important for us as a group, I think. And we kind of grew a lot during the post, right as COVID hit. And since then, that's been a big factor for that.
And I know we've done some snack tent events, what I call snack tent events, to where we bring some snacks. And last Christmas, I actually did a couple bike giveaways, mountain bike and a BMX bike for the kids. And that mountain bike was pretty legit. That was new. That mountain bike is probably, when it's not on sale, it's about $800 kids mountain bike.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you've been one of our. I would definitely consider you. While you're not a sponsor, say on the jersey, like Guru Bikes is here, or Guru Suspension is. You've been a huge supporter of us since we connected and became friends, and we've definitely done some events together like that where we've pushed the event through our page and called it a snack tent event, and you've been the host and have brought not only giveaways but snacks and drinks and refreshments and those. And you've put up a tent. Now we also have our own tent with the Old Pueblo.
Yeah, and that's an amazing looking tent, by the way.
Yeah, that was also designed by David Montrell and then printed by someone who has real experience in doing those tents. But so that those having a sponsor such as yourself or a local bike shop, or and getting the others in the mountain bike community involved in those events, that's really our big focus for 2024. You asked me in the pre-production time slot, what's the focus for Old Pueblo mountain biking in 2024, and the answer to that is large scale open house tent events at locations where we might have multiple different rides. We did the first one of the year was March 16th, and it was just a Saturday at Sweetwater Preserve, or Sweetwater Reserve, I think. And it's just a trailhead located here in the Tucson area, and has a great big parking lot and a place to put up tents. And, we can have a ride go out in the morning. We can have one go out at noon. We can have a clinic where a bike shop does, how to adjust suspension on the trail. So our big focus for 2024 is what do these open house tent events, look like in terms of inviting people of all walks of life and all levels of difficulty. So the trails we're going to host those from are always going to be ones where, one of the great things about Sweetwater is that you can take a rookie roundup out on the trail called Desperado Loop, which is about a 4.5-5 mile loop that's much more green or maybe intermediate blue at spots, kind of like if you were to use like the trail rating system from snow skiing or whatever. But then also there's other routes you can do that are much more challenging and have a stretch like called Lost Arrow, which I would argue is, at least for Sweetwater, is a black section.
Yeah,
an expert section in that trailhead, and a lot of people walk that. So a trailhead such as Sweetwater gives us an opportunity to host an open house with a lot of great opportunities. And then the one we did back in Black Friday of last year, we had a bike shop, Guru Bikes was the host, and he actually brought food. We grilled burgers and hot dogs and had refreshments, and people brought camping chairs and hung out for half a day. So that's kind of our focus, which we're coming off of what we did in 2023 was called the tour, the 2023 tour, and it was 23 rides in the calendar year of 2023. And we basically hit almost every trail system in Tucson. And the idea behind that was to have these kind of dedicated events that you could connect with other riders in the Tucson area and get to know them, but also that you could go and experience a trail for the first time. So if you hadn't been on all 23 trails on the tour, that was one of the ways you could do it. And so we're coming off of that and decided, okay, how do we be even more inclusive and more kind of social than we were during the tour of 2023? And that was our idea, was to do in 2024 was to do these open house tent events. And so we're trying to do one every other month. So the next one, while it's not posted in the group yet, is going to be Memorial Day, which is Monday, May 27th. I think we're still a little bit undecided on the location, although I actually think it's probably going to be Fantasy Island, leaving out of the Sharp area, so that you get Fantasy Island. That trail system has a more intermediate north side and a more beginner friendly south side, and there's entry points at the middle of it where I think we'll actually host from. So I think that's the plan, but we'll get that up and what have you. But we're looking forward to. I think we're going to try and involve Ben's Bikes, which is a local bike shop on that side of town, and
yeah, it's right next to Fantasy Island.
Yeah, and I know that I may have even already reached out to you about being present for that one, and so you're
anytime it's Fantasy Island, there's a good chance, just depending on what time it is, what day. And before we get off of it, because I want to get into some of the other types of rides, I kind of want to just for 1 second stick on the Rookie Roundup, because there's another aspect to the Rookie Roundup where it's not just for beginners. So we've talked about it before, where it could be a recovery ride or coming off an injury ride where you're coming back. It's like you could be an expert rider or a very advanced rider and just come out and join that ride, just to either because you've had some tough rides. Like I've been up on Mount Lemmon doing bugs, Molino Basin, and like I don't want to do that the next day. So I see like, okay, there's a Rookie Roundup, come out for that. Or hey, you're coming off an injury, you come into that ride, and not necessarily just a beginner, it's for everybody.
Yeah, the vision for the Rookie Roundup was really multifaceted for sure. The idea was that it could be a perfect ideal ride for a lot of different riding types and reasons, right? The biggest one is that, Rookie Roundup implies a beginner rider, right? But the truth of the matter was anyone who was leading that ride was probably much more of a advanced to expert rider, and they were ones that knew the trail, could lead a ride. But oftentimes, it could be used as a perfect recovery ride. Someone who had done a really hard ride the day before or had done a series of challenging rides that just wanted to get out and get a recovery ride in, something easier. They're usually shorter distance, and they're usually, there's not usually any climbing involved. They're usually flatter trails. So it definitely gives you the ability to use it as a recovery ride. But I think one of the most common things that we saw when we launched them in the winter of 21 was people using them to come back from injury. Yeah. So someone who has had a fairly significant mountain biking injury and has been off the bike for, 2 to 3, 4 months, or whatever. And they wanted to they were worried about what fitness level they had lost while they were out on injury. You could ease your way back in, but then obviously one of the greatest things about the Rookie Roundup is it's just such a social ride. Like,
and I was going to get into that. It's another thing is even say, because most, advanced riders say if they do have, they can go out on the bunny trails and do it themselves. Right. But it's probably a lot for the social aspect of it's like, hey, how you doing? How are you recovering? Do you need anything? That type of thing.
Yeah. And it's great for kids too. Like we've got, we have a version of the Rookie Roundup called the Little Shredders Edition.
Exactly.
And we've got a couple of dads or moms in the group that have kids that ride that are young kids. Like, one of them, Sean and Jessica have, they have a young, like a 3-year-old or some 3.5, 4-year-old. Actually, I think he's aged a little bit over the couple of years, but I think he might have won one of your bikes.
Yeah. So are we talking about Declan?
Yeah, Declan, little Declan.
So he's older than that now. So when he first started riding, he was probably about 4.
Okay.
My
kids are teenagers now, so I've lost track of what little kids are.
Yeah. So he won I think it was the 24-inch.
Okay.
I don't think he might have grown into it or is getting ready to grow into it. And I've seen they posted one video where he was on that bike.
Nice.
But yeah, so he might be around 6, 7 now.
Okay. Yeah. The idea that those little guys could get, you could find girls and guys of that age frame, and also parents who may struggle to get out and go riding because maybe they have to get a babysitter for their kids. A great example of the value of the rookie roundup, especially a Little Shredders edition, is getting parents together where they don't have to spend time away from their kids to go mountain biking. They can actually bring them along. So that's another good example of a much more experienced rider that might be riding a rookie roundup. That the reason that they're out there is, as someone in the, as AZ MTB biker has said in the chat, that they never thought of a rookie roundup as being something like a recovery or a chill ride. That's exactly what it can be for someone who's more experienced and is going to go hard the next weekend or whatever, kind of a deal. So,
so we'll transition that to the other types of rides that Old Pueblo offers. So can you get into a little bit of that?
Yeah. I think I'm kind of famous for naming things. Now, oddly enough, Captain Enthusiasm, which you can see, I'm trying to point to it.
It's the Captain Enthusiasm, by the way.
It's Captain Enthusiasm. That's my nickname. Actually, is not a nickname that came from mountain biking. It was a nickname that came from some buddies of mine involved in some church service related stuff. And he thought of me as the captain of enthusiasm. Like I just was always incredibly enthusiastic about just about anything, and I was always up for anything. So anyways, I'm kind of famous for naming things, and I love to name rides. I like to name people's bikes. I just have lots of names for things. So I started thinking about what's a naming convention and naming our actual ride events that would give people an opportunity to understand what to expect. Because it was big for me to know. Like I'm thinking as I started, I started back on the bike in the early part of 2020, just before the pandemic hit. And I had taken a long time off the bike, about 13 years, because I was earning a living as a professional photographer. And a lot of my jobs were weddings and they were booked, a year out. And I found that if I were to have an accident on the trail and be out for 3 months, that I might not actually be able to shoot the wedding events that I was already contracted for. So I was off the bike for a long time. So when I returned in the spring of 2020, just before the pandemic, I went on a couple group rides that were not of our group, not of Old Pueblo MTB, and didn't know what to expect. And of course, like I was saying earlier, I got on a couple of these rides. And when I did, I didn't know what to expect. And in one case in particular, they were just like off like it was a race. And I never saw them again. So a part of my motivation for naming the rides and coming up with a description for them was so that a rider who wanted to join us could be very aware of what they were getting into. So the rookie roundup is kind of that entry level. It's, the name implies that there may be beginners. It may be a relatively easier ride. Then we have rides here in Arizona that start before 9 a.m. And in the summer start much, much more before 9 a.m. More like 6 a.m. are called dawn patrol rides.
Yeah. And it does get pretty light out here, say in the summertime, June, July. Like you could literally go riding right at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. The sun's cracking up, sometime around 4:30 in the morning, oftentimes by the middle of the summer. So we have a ride called the Dawn Patrol, which was an early weekend ride that was either on a Saturday or Sunday. And the idea behind that was it was kind of the ride that I anchored. So it was a little more intermediate. I had done a first mountain biking career from 2002 to 2007. So I was not a beginner rider when I returned in 2020. So the Dawn Patrol rides were a little more intermediate. And then as the year went along and it was not quite as hot, we would call that same ride the Midday Mayhem ride. And those rides would start sometime between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. So that was kind of the intermediate weekend ride. And then there's a ride that's been around forever with Old Pueblo. We started in 2011. And in 2011, the main ride that was started by Todd Rasmussen and his friends, his core of friends, they're called the OGs, or the old school OGs. And by that, I mean, one of my reasons for naming them that, which I caught flack for early on, was the idea that they're not old. It's not about them being old. It's about the fact that the ride times of Sunday afternoon
Guys.
Yeah. OGs was more like the original, group members.
The original gangsters.
The long-standing ride time slot that was being done week to week was Sunday afternoons, and that ride has a variety. It's a no drop ride, as most of our rides are, which I'll describe what that means in a moment. But it was a variety of skill levels, and they almost always had enough people to break into two groups. So there's the old school OGs on Sunday afternoon. I kind of talked to Todd and said, hey, I can't ride on Sunday afternoons week to week. It's just too much of a family time, and I had possible job responsibilities. And so I said, hey, do you mind if I just post a ride on Saturday mornings and see who wants to ride on Saturday mornings? Because Todd himself and some of his core friends didn't ride on Saturday mornings for various reasons. I think at the time, for a lot of years, Todd was actually working on Saturdays. But so he said, yeah, go for it. He was like, hey, of course, I was enthusiastic enough to think I was going to, get anyone and everyone. And so it started out as just, hey, come ride with Travis on Saturday mornings. And, before long, it became, it's clear that there were a lot of people that could ride on Saturday mornings. And so we, while I certainly continued to do so and post those Dawn Patrol rides, it grew into, a lot of ride leaders being kind of empowered and encouraged to host rides. So, so we have, in addition to variety of rides like the Rookie Roundup, the Dawn Patrol, and the Midday Mayhem, if it's certain times of the year, we also have the old school OGs ride. But then another thing was we wanted there are people in our group who are fast riders, very skilled. We have some incredible mountain bikers, men and women, in our group. And so I launched a ride called the Optimum Octane, which was an idea of a ride that was going to be fast paced and a more difficult trailhead. Just something that, so that there was a little bit of something for everyone. And there was definitely people that were willing to lead the Optimum Octanes. That wasn't me. So,
so I've been on a few of those, mainly on Mount Lemon, because those are pretty advanced rides. I am not fast, but I am a technical rider, at least for that. So, a lot of those rides end up on Mount Lemon. So we have some Optima Octane rides up there, but we've also done some intermediate rides where we've introduced some riders that are advancing into Prison Camp to Molino Basin. And I've done a couple videos on that featuring Old Pueblo.
Yeah. When we'll do a trail like that, where it's, where an Optimum Octane ride at least has the possibility that you might get left behind, or that it's going to be a faster pace than you're used to. Again, going back to the idea that I wanted people to know what they were getting into. And when we post those rides, we have ride descriptions. It talks about the distance and the difficulty, and sometimes even has posted like a Strava map that kind of shows like the topography. Yeah. But anyways, when we'll do something like that Molino Basin Prison Camp ride, and we want to take people who've never been, we'll say it's hosted by those that bring you the Dawn Patrol. And we'll change the description to say, yeah, this is an Optimum Octane because it's a difficult trail. But what we'll do is it's going to be led by people who are understanding that we're really trying to give a great experience to people who are coming to try it for the first time. And usually we'll couple that with some sort of shuttle system. So that ride in particular is mostly a downhill ride. And so we'll have shuttles at the bottom that'll take people back to the top. And so we're really looking to make, and that's going to be one of our tent events, more than likely, will be in the fall.
And I know we've worked with the Forest Service there before to get access back to the Molino Basin campground. And I actually did a small short video about where we went back in there, did some brush clearing out there. So they give us access back there because Molino Basin parking area is very limited. And we had on a couple of those rides, like 20, 30-ish plus riders on those rides.
We had one of them that pushed 50, I think.
Yeah. And one of the videos I have, it's like there's like 30 plus people in that video.
Yeah, and when we were running the shuttles, which were just courtesy shuttles, just us friends shuttling friends around, there were other people that were doing them and then just said, oh, can we get a ride back up to our cars or whatever?
Yeah, so we were shuttling just the locals.
Weren't in our group, and that was fine. I mean, that was fun.
Yeah, because like a lot of time, we had rides. So like for me, I have that nice Velocirack bike rack that holds 5 bikes. With the 4Runner, I can have 5 people, 5 bikes. So a lot of times I'm up there with my friends, whether it be just one or two of us or three of us. I got room for two more people.
Yeah,
We're
you're
going up the Bugs or Molino Basin, whatever. We just pick up some riders at Molino Basin parking area and we just take them up as well.
Well, what's really fun about that ride in particular, and you mentioned it, is our partnership with the local Forest Service. We, at one point, they closed that campground because it's lower on the mountain and it's hot a lot of the year. And so they closed that campground for most of, I think it closes sometime in the early to mid spring and doesn't open again until like,
Yeah, I just talked to the camp host. He's about ready to move on up.
yeah. Okay. So it'll shut down usually from probably mid-April to mid-September or even October. And one of the things that we did was we offered our assistance in helping them clean up the area, after all the summer monsoons and overgrowth that happens. And so they took us up on that. We came and gave them some manpower and helped them do some cleanup. And as a result,
Yeah, we had, I don't know, 20, 30 people out there, at least 20.
Yeah, there was
cleaning up the brush.
Good turnout. They were really happy with.
So we got to use that, like, because normally that would be closed back there.
Yeah,
we got to use
that. They have a gate across that, the whole roadway that goes up to the big Ramada, and so they give us access, gate code access and allowance from the guy who's manages the front gate. And they'll allow us opportunity to get back there. And that's just been a lot of fun. It just feels like a private event, even though it's, 50.
Well, we didn't want to disrupt the parking up there either, because, we got like 20, 30, 40 people with this event, and we do meet up at the bottom, at the base of the mountain, and we try to limit the vehicles going up. Like, hey, some of us that have the better shuttle vehicles, we'll go up, but
yeah, and we have a few people in the group that have like a flatbed trailer and, a big, huge truck that can throw, 15, 20 bikes in the back.
It's T, Chris. This is my buddy, Chris from Black Bikes. It's Sun T.
Nice.
So real quick, Travis, if anybody has a question for Travis or me, whoever, just type it in the chat and we'll get to it.
All I know is I'm just digging whoever it is that called me a kid.
Wait, somebody called you a kid? Oh, yes. So that's Johnny Yu. He runs a mountain bike podcast that he's from Miami. It's Mountain Bike Q&A.
Yeah, I love
it.
Very,
very awesome podcast. Please go check him out. Johnny, I think you're about 52-ish, somewhere around there.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, yeah. So it's funny that he's calling you a kid because
I'm only a couple years behind you, Johnny. I turned 50 in August, so. Hopefully I don't look at, even though I've got my COVID haircut and my my salt and pepper beard, but only the viewers on YouTube with the video get a chance to see that. So, but anyway.
So while I'm on that topic, there's another buddy of mine, along with Johnny. I think he kind of got into it. Mark Hill. He has another podcast, mountain bike podcast, called The Segment. So please, once you're done with all this podcast, go check those two guys out. Mountain Bike Q&A. And that's Johnny Yu, and then my buddy Mark Hill, the segment. Mark Hill was out of Southern California, like San Diego area, Marietta, but he has an awesome podcast as well.
That's cool. Well, one of the things I wanted to circle back and hit with the ride events, if you allow me, is just to talk a little bit about our diversifying and empowering people to lead their own rides. I thought that was such a key growth point for us as a mountain biking group here in Tucson, and definitely wanted to share that because I feel like it's something that can be replicated in other cities and other places, and I think it really has done a big. Has been a big help in terms of pushing this idea that we're just very inclusive and open and welcoming. And really the goal of ours is just to introduce more people to mountain biking and more people to riding in Southern Arizona, but also to friendship groups. As anyone with a really great hobby can attest to, that, oftentimes those hobbies are more fun, enjoyed with people that are like-minded and doing the sport together. And I know that, I've had the luxury of spending some time with you, Neil, doing some these fun trips. I particularly remember one up to Flagstaff and Sedona.
It's so funny. I have this in my notes because it snowed up there, and that's very memorable. It got dark on us. I was supposed to be the guide because I was the only one in the group that had done those trails up there. We had got through Schultz Creek, which is an awesome, awesome trail. And I think we ended up on Eldon Trail, and I had hit a rock. My rim got bent, and didn't even think to even ask anybody if they had a tube to get down the hill. But now I'm no longer guiding, so I'm the only one that really knows that trail. And you guys kind of got maybe a little turned around or lost. And I just remember in the end, there was a little scuffle or argument between two individuals in the parking lot in the end, but it all was squashed. It was just kind of a weird thing. We all had dinner later that night and everything was fine, but I just remember that part of it. I don't even remember who those two guys were, but yeah.
I mean, that's just proof that mountain biking is an adventure, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah. So at the end of the night, it was perfectly fine. I think they were just tired, and it was dark, and it was kind of got to a weird, like, hey, how are we supposed to get back to the parking area? We have no idea. And I remember, so another aspect of Old Pueblo is a lot of times on these group rides, we do use radios to communicate with each other.
Yeah. It's funny. You mentioned that because the radios were kind of a thing for me. I really, I've had experience in previous employment and adventure seeking through scuba diving of using two-way, FRS radios. And so, we used to, when we would be driving in Mexico and we'd be, from Southern Arizona, you can drive straight down 6 hours south into Mexico and hit the Gulf of California or the Baja, and you can go scuba diving there. And we would use radios communicating between cars. This was like, the mid 90s. So cell phones were not really a thing. And so if you were going to communicate vehicle to vehicle, we'd either have CB. The really fancy vehicles had CB radios, but most of us just had two-way radios. But I realized really early on that, even in 2023, 2022, 2021, cell phone coverage was not great on a lot of the trails. And so in order to communicate, the radios began to be a really popular thing. And so we got kind of really well known. I kind of wish I had one to show off. It's just a Midland, radio. You can get 3 of them for $75, and nothing fancy, just FRS, no permits are needed or anything. No, it's not like ham radio, but they became just a really great way to communicate to each other, especially when you had group rides where someone in front and someone in back both had radios. This went a long way towards a feeling of safety. Like if you were a new rider joining us on one of our rides, and we would oftentimes have radios to hand out to new people. So if there was someone who legitimately had a concern that, I'm afraid, even if this wasn't true, they might say, I'm afraid I might get left behind or I might get lost on a trail. I don't know. The radios were a quick and easy way to say, hey, here's a radio you can use for this ride. And, that way you can communicate with the ride leaders, both at the front and the back. And so the radios became a popular way to stay safe on the trail and, communicate where there wasn't great cell phone coverage.
And we had talked about earlier about prize giveaways. I actually give a couple radios away in one of the snack tent events to somebody, the radios that we use, the $50 radios we kind of use. And I did give a couple of those away.
That's perfect. Yeah.
And I want to say hi to Marty Richards. He's actually out of New Zealand.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
So our show's gone international, Travis.
We are international right there.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing on that whole idea of empowering others, and the ride names and the rides, the types of rides we have. If you all remember, sometime through COVID, there was a time when gas prices just absolutely spiked. In Southern Arizona, spiking was like $4.79 a gallon. I know if you're in Southern California, I think it went well over $6.
Yeah, it was like $7, $8 in some spots.
Yeah, ridiculous prices. And here in Southern Arizona, $4.79 or $4.89 was the highest. I think I remember it hitting, which, and even right now it's right at $4. So it's not like it's that much cheaper now. It has gone down and back up. But
Yeah.
the point being is that at one point we decided that in my Pilot, I have a Honda Pilot, and it gets about 16 miles to the gallon. And I live on the far northwest side of town in a suburb of Tucson called the Oro Valley. And technically, if you look by drive times between myself and you, Neil, we're about an hour apart.
Yeah, and I was going to say that's why I like doing this virtually through, video, is because we are about an hour apart. So to try to meet up, for me to go up there or you to come down here to plug in to the podcast studio here, it's a little easier. And of course, like, we can talk to anybody, whether it be in New Zealand, Australia, wherever. We can do it this way through the program I'm running here.
It'd be kind of cool if you could do a mountain bike ride virtually like that. But
BKXC, he's tried that to where he's done like a kind of a FaceTime, like live stream ride. But the problem is, of course, you lose coverage. So like if you're in town, you're in the middle of town with good cell coverage, it's fine. But you start getting out to Nowheresville, like Mount Lemmon, for the most part, once you get down to say like 6,000 feet, there's no cell phone coverage.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Well, one of the interesting things that happened with that is the fact that we were, say, an hour apart meant that, for me to drive my vehicle across town was about $22 round trip for a mountain bike ride. And that began to be cost prohibitive, especially, if I'm riding as much as I was. So what we did was we had some East Side friends and we had some Northwest friends, and it was like, why don't we divide and conquer? Why don't we have an East Side ride this weekend and a Northwest side so that people could.
Well, and here's another point I want to make. So Old Pueblo MTB is not, so you go on your Facebook page and you see the events. It's not just one ride for the weekend. It's multiple rides.
Truth.
And multiple disciplines, whether it be beginner, rookie roundup, all the way up to intermediate to optimum octane. So there could be like potentially 2 or 3, 4 different rides going on, because correct me if I'm wrong, I think Old Pueblo has over 4,500 members now.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way, I guess, to really know how many of them are real or
well, yeah. So that is on the Facebook page.
Yeah.
I will say there are times, like I've led rookie roundup rides where we had 54 riders in my video.
Yeah. Now, when I kind of came back to the bike just before the pandemic started and started riding again, and this would have been February, March of 2020, like literally just before the pandemic started. Old Pueblo MTB had about 850 members on the Facebook page. And at that time, just for a variety of reasons, there was really only the one weekly ride, which was the old school OGs on Sunday afternoon. But when I approached Todd and said, hey, I can't ride on Sunday afternoons, can I post a ride for Saturday morning? It was that, and having another time slot with a group ride that one could join. And it was then the massive benefit that we got from COVID happening in terms of people's interest in outdoor activities and not being able to go to a gym or, the being outside and doing something during COVID. Mountain biking and the bicycle industry, as we all know, benefited massively. Mountain bike, riding bikes and cycling, along with, I'm sure, other outdoor activities, all went through the roof during the COVID pandemic.
And I got a caveat to that. So in the YouTube sphere, the YouTube videos during that time went up exponentially during that time. So you see like views now compared to then, it's night and day. It is absolutely night and day.
Interesting.
So like if you look at even, the biggest mountain bike YouTuber out there, Seth Bike Hacks, now Burn Peak, incredible content, right? But you look at his videos during that time, and even a few years before that, like it's like dropped off by millions, and in views.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when during the since basically the start of the pandemic with 850 members on the Facebook page. We're now pushing 4,500, a short 4 years later. And
so when I joined, it was about 700. And in my mind, I would also hope to think like maybe just a little bit. A part of that was some of my videos featuring Old Pueblo MTB, on my YouTube channel, which, about every sixth video or so is something to do with, our group ride. So hopefully maybe some of that came from my videos of, kind of highlight.
I don't think there's any question that definitely played a role. I mean, I think there was a lot of things working together. I mean,
that and the pandemic, of course.
Yeah. Well, and so, one of the things that happened real quickly was between raising up some other leaders and other ride leaders and what have you, in addition to that, and having then split up across the city from each other when the gas prices got so high, we empowered at that time, Gary and Todd and I, who are considered kind of some of the main admins for the channel. We're just the servant leaders of the group, and really empowering others to post a ride and lead a ride and get comfortable doing so. Really expanded our ride offerings. Like you say, when you go into that events section, any given weekend, we might have 5 or 6 rides on the weekend. There'll be a morning ride on Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes there'll be an afternoon ride on Saturday. There's always an afternoon ride on Sunday. Sometimes there'll be a night ride, or a rookie roundup in the afternoon on Saturday. So it's not uncommon to have anywhere between 3 and 6 rides on a weekend. And then during the week, we'll have night rides. We'll have weekday wake up rides for people locally, like me and a bunch of my friends up here in the Northwest. We'll go out and ride the trails before work from 5 to 8 a.m. And so we'll have people who live locally. We'll do those, and then there's a wonderful subset group of the women riders in Old Pueblo. Dirt Divas. And the Dirt Divas, there's some wonderful women of all ages and all skill sets running that subset of ours. And they host several rides almost every week. They've got Dirt Divas rides, which are rides really intended for women only. The advantage there is, a lot of times, just like going to a gym, I think there are times when women feel uncomfortable joining group rides for especially if they're single or whatever. And so the Dirt Divas rides are rides led by women for women. And so, and what's really great about them is they really felt it very important, and they enjoyed riding with the men at other times of the week. So they really wanted to stay a part of Old Pueblo and have women specific rides, but not have a women specific group. Like they really wanted to stay connected to us because a lot of them were friends.
Yeah. And Old Pueblo and Dirt Divas is pretty much synonymous with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why our event tent has 4 sides of it, like one of those pop-up tents, and 2 sides are the Dirt Divas and 2 sides are Old Pueblo. I mean, the Dirt Divas are as much a part of us as
and they have a cool jersey as well.
Yeah, they have a really rad jersey. I should have brought that up to show off. But yeah, so if you look in the events, you'll see like there's Dirt Divas specific rides. And then there's rides. Then there are co-ed rides led by the Dirt Divas, which is a ride initiated by the women riding group, where they're like, "Hey, come on and join us, guys! Like, this is not a girls only ride."
Yeah, I've seen a few times where like there will be some of the guys jump in with the Dirt Divas for whatever reason, and it's perfectly okay and fine.
Yeah, usually it might be a spouse of one of the women that joins for a particular ride. But as a general whole, I know the vision for that group when they do a true Dirt Divas ride is their goal is, mainly to be women specific. And I think as a general whole, that boundary is respected pretty well. And I think the culture's gotten to where, it's one thing to run into a group of guys that are out there that then ride with them for a little while. It's, but that's just another one of our rides. So we've got the Dirt Divas running women specific rides. We got the rookie roundups, the Optimum Octane, the Dawn Patrol rides, the weekday wake ups, the night rides. I mean, there's just about anything. I did want to do a shout out. I think that Gus jumped in here for.
Yeah, Gus was in here. Like he a rare Gus sighting.
Yeah, he commented about how good looking we were. Gus is still around. I want to say thanks.
And I want to say hi to my buddy Trail Pimp. He was featured on one of the other podcasts. I think it was either Johnny's or Mark's. I can't remember which one. What's up, Trail Pimp? Again, if anybody that's live in here, if you have questions for either me, particularly Travis, please type it in the chat. This is my first ever podcast, so I'm doing my best to keep up. I have mentioned Mark Hill and the Segment Podcast and Johnny Yu. Yeah, I have such an appreciation for you guys doing these podcasts. It is not easy. And Travis, you're making it easy on me because like
Good.
you're doing 90% of the talking. And so I'm trying my best here. Well, we had the kind of audio issue that was going on, early in the podcast, but we're going good here.
Yeah,
you still got some time, Travis, because there's some questions I still got to ask you.
Yeah, we recovered nicely from the early issues, and I think you've got sounds like you got a lot of buddies doing podcasts that have paved the way for you.
Not only a couple of them doing podcasts, but some of them have been guests on the podcast right here. So I know Marty, he was a guest on one of those guys' podcasts. I can't keep them all straight. And then my buddy Chris, Black Bikes, he doesn't really do videos anymore, but please go check him out. Black Bikes, particularly his first video ever. So in the YouTube world, most of us, like when we do our first video, they're horrible. They're absolutely horrible. Not Black Bikes, not Chris. His first video was an incredible video on, what was it, Chris? The invention of the greatest invention ever made, the bicycle, something like that. Anyways, please go check that out. It's one of the best videos about cycling, mountain biking on the internet. I just wanted to give a kind of a plug to there.
Okay.
Anyways, Travis, I wanted to kind of go. Yeah, go ahead.
My turn for a plug because I got one of my dear friends jumped in the chat. He's on there as David, but I know this is David K. Because
it's so funny because this is actually in my notes. What's your favorite trail?
Yeah, he asked me what's my new favorite trail. Man, I miss you, David Kern. I hope that you get a chance to get out here to Tucson to ride with us again soon. To answer that question, it changes frequently, as David knows and is kindly pointing out. When we got to experience several trails together, he always laughed at the fact that through my enthusiasm and everything, I would say, it's my new favorite trail. So I think my new favorite trail is always the one that I experienced most recently. So for me, I just did, I've done Ridgeline, behind me in my neighborhood, in the Cordillera Mountains. Ridgeline is a very challenging, trail that's made much easier by an e-bike.
And maybe we can get into that here in a minute.
Yeah, I happen to ride a 2021 Levo Turbo specialized turbo, Levo Turbo. Anyways, all that to say is that my new favorite trail is probably still Ridgeline, although I know that
because those that have not ridden Ridgeline here in Tucson, it is about 2 miles of a downhill, but the problem is getting to it.
Yeah. Well, and it's through a 12-mile loop, it's about 2,000 feet of climbing. So that's why I say it's very made much easier by an e-bike. But so I think I miss you too, DK. I think that my new favorite trail would be probably my top 3 just in this area is Ridgeline here on the Honeybee Trail system. I love Oracle State Park up the road from me, about 30 minutes. That's got some wonderful summits and beautiful high desert views. And then, it's really hard for me not to love a trail like Sweetwater, which feels like a bike park to me in terms of just having all kinds of great little, loops and pathways and mapped out tracks you can go on that just really enjoy Sweetwater a lot. So
I'll go into my quick.
Yeah. Tell me your trails.
So of course, like this time of year, about every weekend, we're up on Mount Lemmon. So of course, Bug Springs to Molino Basin, Prison Camp to Molino Basin is one of the most popular trails, right?
Right.
So, but as the summer comes in, we'll go all the way up to Aspen Draw, which, one of the few areas out here we can actually ride with shade and up in the aspens and actually ride in the trees.
Yeah.
So anything up on Mount Lemon is just awesome. It is very technical riding up there. So it's, all pretty much black diamond, double black diamond trails, but it is our gravity fed trails that here in Tucson, but with a bunch of punchy climbs. So like you're climbing up a bunch of rock chunk, and that's just Tucson. Everything out here is chunky. There's no like pure downhill.
Yeah, truth. Well, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I know you've been a frequent rider on Mount Lemon. I know you've done a lot of videos up there, and you've really taken to the Bug Springs, kind of leading into prison camp.
Yeah, and even some of the other ones, beyond that is going down to Biota to Milagrosa, which is another animal in itself, because Milagrosa is a double black diamond. It is a beast of a trail, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. So once you go up, so part of Mount Lemon, those trails are part of the AZT, the Arizona Trail, which stretches forever. 800 miles through Arizona.
I think it goes from Mexico all the way up to Utah, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah. Well, one of the great comments in the section that someone asked about, they asked a legitimate question, which is the Levo the best e-bike out there? And
where was that in the chat?
Yeah. I don't know. Octodad asked the question: is the Levo the best? And just to clarify, the Levo he's referring to is Specialized has a mountain e-bike called the Levo Turbo, and I have the 2021 version of it. It's the aluminum with the biggest battery, biggest motor. It weighs about 53 pounds. And I certainly love it. It fits me like a glove. I wouldn't be the one saying that I think it's the best one out there. There's so many good e-bikes these days, and I've got dear friends that are riding Orbeas, like David Kern, who is in the chat here. There's friends riding Rocky Mountains. There's Specialized.
So I got to plug the YT Decoy.
Yeah, see the
YT. Yeah, so some of my friends out there in Southern California, Mark Hill, Joey Yates, they're ambassadors for Decoy. They're always plugging the YT Decoy.
Yeah, there's a guy here in town, a local chiropractor named Dr. We call him Dr. Mike. He just got into an e-bike. He was riding a 26. He's a Canadian dude that's been riding downhill parks and all that stuff for eons. And he had an old 26er that he was riding up until he went onto a YT. I don't know the model, but I know it's a YT e-bike, and he just absolutely loves it. And but yeah, so as much as I love the Levo Turbo, and in fact, I actually got a license plate in the state of Arizona. I got a vanity plate that says Levo MTB, so LE MTB, because my funny thing is I drive a 2005 Honda Pilot, and it just turned 300,000 miles, and so when my Levo Turbo is on the back of it on a bike rack, it costs more than the car itself.
Yeah, exactly.
So all that to say is that while I can sing the praises of the Specialized Levo any day of the week, and I love it to death, especially because it's in the orange color that just suits me perfectly.
Well, of course, it's the Old Pueblo. Colors.
It looks like it's the Old Pueblo bike, but I mean, there's so many great bikes out there, and there's so many great, e-bikes. I think what we're all learning and really fast is that e-bikes are here to stay. And I've oftentimes said this, and I won't claim to be the one that said it first, but e-bikes coming into the mountain bike world is a lot like snowboarders coming into the snow skiing arena. We're all sharing the mountain together, right? E-bikers and as some people now call them naughty bikes, not e-bikes. Yeah, naughty bikes. I like to say, because mine is called a turbo, I like to call the other bikes naturally aspirated.
Yes. But, and I know you mentioned that on the other podcast.
Yeah, and some people call them acoustic, is a common term for a bike that's not an e-bike. But at any rate, they're I'm trying to think where I was headed with that. I just actually got derailed on my thought there. But
which is so funny, because I got my buddy Johnny Yu. He constantly says his brain derails on his podcast, kind of ADHD. It's one of his common sayings. I love you, Johnny. You're the greatest, man. But It's funny because it's one of his common sayings.
Well, there's a ton of great e-bikes out there. Oh, I know what I was talking about, how like e-bikers invading, and becoming commonplace on the mountain bike trail is a lot like when I was a snow skier in the early 80s, when the snowboarders began to hit in the late 80s and 90s, and it was, there was a lot of upheaval about snowboarders being on the mountain with.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same type of concept.
Yeah, it's and the resistance is the same, right? There was like, trails or downhill sections that were for where snowboarders were allowed, and then there was other trails where snowboarders weren't allowed. And I haven't been snow skiing in 2 decades, but I'd imagine that most mountains now don't even differentiate between.
Yeah, and I think it's a very vocal minority. I think for the most part, like e-bikes are fine for like 99% of the riders out there. Maybe in the beginning, but I think these days, like truly 99% of riders, like they could care less whether you're on an acoustic or e-bike, like because like class 1 e-bikes, you have to pedal it. It's not like there's a throttle or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true pedal assist. If we're going to just define it here for definition and discussion, true pedal assist class 1 e-bikes do not have a throttle and require user input to even work. And even then, you can have the power off. You can have it in a small, slow, like if I have mine in what's called eco mode, I can customize it to be 10% power. Or if I'm in turbo, if I'm riding ridgeline and I'm trying to go up that ridiculous fire road to get out of there, I'll have it in turbo at 100% power. So there's all kinds of various levels of which you can have the e-bike assisting you. But I think the real reason for the laws and the rules about e-bikes are specifically back when those e-bikes first started to make an arrival, and they had throttles, and they had issues with the batteries and engines causing fires. And out here the issue,
and they've corrected all that for the most part.
Yeah, and class 1 really, that was.
And class 1 got lumped in with everything all the way up to gasoline, motors. Class 1 is just a totally separate animal.
So I feel like most of the rules in this area in particular are this is a personal opinion, so I'll say that I'm not to know every angle of every side of this, but I will say that I feel like most of the rules are antiquated and haven't caught up with the allowance and the distinction between class 1 and other issues. Like one of the things that the problem with the Southern Arizona desert is it spends a lot of the year very dry. And so I know that when there was a fire concern from e-bikes early on, and I would say we're probably talking circa 2017, 2018, that was maybe a concern back then, but I think it's all been completely corrected in terms of.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I've heard through the years too is the weight difference, right? But that goes from rider to rider. So like if one rider is say 150 pounds versus a 200-pound rider, there's a weight difference right there just in the rider.
Yeah. If you were to talk about the arguments for and against, or what is commonly put as an obstacle for e-bikes when they say, oh, they're so heavy and on the trail they do trail damage. To me, that immediately goes away when you talk about a rider who's 60 pounds and 14 versus a rider who's 280 and what they used to call the rock crusher division in racing. So I mean, when you get those wide variety of variants in rider weight, why does it matter whether a bike is 37 pounds or 52? But what's David Kern points out in the chat is that the bikes these days are getting so hard to tell the difference. There's super lights, there's carbon. Some of the bikes that some of my friends are riding with the lightweight motors and batteries and carbon frames are 29 to 32 pounds, which is about the same weight as a standard, just straight up.
Yeah, my enduro bike is like 35 pounds.
Yeah, so I mean, it's getting to the point where they're so stealth. I've often joked that if someone really wanted to catch people riding the e-bikes at Sweetwater, where they have a lot of posted signs about no pedal assist, I'm imagining like at the saddle, there's this common spot where everyone kind of crests this little hill, and then there's these back loops. I'm envisioning like a U.S. Border Patrol kind of stop where you have to pull over into a bay and they have to inspect your bike to see if you're riding an e-bike. And
that goes into another issue about, the enforcement of it. I think most of the entities that would enforce these things, particularly with Class 1 e-bikes, they could probably care less, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're learning too is that there's a lot of bigger fish to fry than spending time with.
Well, and it's in the chat here too. This is a whole other podcast alone. Is the Surons, the electric,
which is essentially a motorcycle with
it is a motorcycle pretty much that is a electric dirt bike. Yeah. It's a totally different animal. Class 1 e-bikes pedal assist, where you actually have to pedal it. It is a totally different thing, where we are seeing more and more all kind of videos out there of these Surons on mountain bike trails. That's a totally separate thing because the Suron's not a Class 1 e-bike.
Yeah, and the Suron to me looks like a motorcycle. One of the things about Class 1 e-bikes, as David was pointing out, is they're getting to be so stealthy in terms of how they look exactly like a mountain bike. And so, it's really hard to mistake. And I think mostly you have true mountain bikers riding e-mountain bike Class 1, pedal assist, whereas Surons, I think my impression is you typically have the kind of traditional motocross guys who are experienced and ripping up trails where those trails are designed to be ripped up. But then
there's places to ride those
bike trail, it's problematic.
In Arizona, it is just my opinion, but it should be on a single track mountain bike trail. Just my opinion.
Yeah.
And, well, okay, go ahead.
My foray into the e-bike, and when someone asks me what is the best e-bike or isn't the Levo the best e-bike, my situation was I kind of fell bass backwards into a Levo Turbo, and it wasn't really.
And I was going to get into that with the whole health scare. I was hoping you would kind of get into that.
Yeah, I think where I wanted to head with that, and certainly can talk a little bit about that, where I didn't have a choice falling into a Specialized Levo. I had very generous friends of mine looking to sell a bike at about the time I needed it, and they wanted me to try it out. And so, I didn't go out shopping for an e-bike and land on the Specialized as the bike for me. I wasn't comparing the Specialized versus Rocky Mountain versus Orbea versus YT, Santa Cruz. For me, I got one put in my hands, and I realized how wonderful the e-bike feature was going to be for me and my personal recovery. My health journey is such that in the July 18th of 2022, I had a heart attack and nearly died. And there's lots of kind of stars aligning for reasons.
And I will say, if somebody wants to go into the details about that, you can go into the Mountain Cog podcast, number 68. And, that you go in very kind of detailed about that. Yeah. So, if somebody wants to kind of deep dive into that.
I think I'll do a truncated version of it here. For the purpose of the e-bike conversation. But yeah, so I had a heart attack in July of 22, and it was, I'm still lucky to be here and to have a second chance with a stent that was put in within an hour and a half of the heart attack, and it saved my life and has really changed my life. But all that to say is that during my recovery process, dear friends of mine, the readers that had a bike for sale, they were in no hurry to sell it. And when I had the heart attack, they wanted me to get a chance to try an e-bike and see what it was all about. So I never spent hours and hours poring over all the options out there for e-bikes saying the Levo Turbo is the only one for me. It just got loaned to me. And I found
it was kind of like, hey, here, try this out.
Yeah. So while I will sing its praises and rave about it, it is also the only thing I've ever known. So in fairness to all the other brands.
And I know one of the other riders for Old Pueblo, we was doing at the church, we was building the bikes for the kids, and I don't know who it was, but one of the admin guys had an e-bike out there, and it was my first introduction to an e-bike. And I was like, yeah, this is cool.
Yeah. Todd probably brought his, he has a Polygon, a pretty nice Polygon e-bike. I think he had it out there, and I think that was one. Oh no, I think you tried David Mills' bike.
It was David's. It was David's.
Yeah, David Mills has a Rocky Mountain. He had that out there. That was your first experience with an e-bike?
Yeah, that was my first experience, and then so I've been looking at getting the YT decoy maybe this year, maybe.
Well, you'll love it to death. I know. The thing with the e-bike that was such a huge thing for me, and why I think that there's a real place for e-bikes, pedal assist Class 1 bikes in this world, is that, there's a lot of reasons why, I probably wouldn't have returned to mountain biking after the heart attack. And just the safety net that the e-bike gives me to do things and not put myself in a position to where I can get into trouble. Like, one of the things I did was my daughter moved up to Phoenix to attend Arizona State University in the fashion school, and she was living with a family member, and that family member lives 10 minutes away from White Tanks National Park and our regional mountain park, and then the also 15 minutes from Australia Mountain Park up in Western Phoenix. And so I went to Australia on the e-bike, and I just started exploring everything. Like, I wasn't worried about going uphill too far or making a wrong turn and getting on an uphill instead of a downhill. Like, the great thing was that the e-bike just gave me the complete flexibility and freedom to explore safely and always have a safety net. And so I have the freedom and flexibility to run it at nearly no power. And when I need it, and when I'm just gassed, I can run it at full power. So,
and I know there's been quite a bit of studies with people on e-bikes, because they're actually out and about. And I think maybe you had talked about it, and I've heard through other channels as well, that the fact that somebody is on an e-bike, they're actually doing exercise where otherwise they might not. And people that have like Fitbits or some type of health monitor, tracker, smartwatch, it does conclude in some cases that you're actually pushing it quite a bit.
Yeah, I would love to share, probably, as you pointed out, rather than go into depth on my heart attack story and the survival of that, which I did in great detail on the Mountain Cog podcast, episode 68. I'd rather say this about e-bikes and about the health side of it, because my own opinion about e-bikes going into it was that I was like, well, I've always been using mountain bike as my primary exercise, and so mountain biking. So I didn't want to rob myself of a workout, which is why I probably would have steered clear of an e-bike for a lot longer than I did, obviously, as a result of the health issue. But one of the things that I wear a Whoop band. This is what's here. It's not a watch. It's a Whoop band.
Yeah.
WHOOP. It's an incredible health tracker that's got proprietary information on tracking variable heart rates. And anyways, it's got a lot of medical research behind it. You can find it online. I've been wearing it for almost 3 years now. And well before the heart attack, I had about 2 years of data leading up to the heart attack, which is a whole nother story about how I can't believe 7 or 10 days before the heart attack, I was doing the kind of riding I was. But at any rate, what's interesting was my own impression of e-bikes was that I'm going to rob myself of a workout. Yes. Like, I thought, well, it is cheating without a doubt. Like, I was like, this is not going to give me a workout, and that this is the very thing I need from mountain biking as a workout. So what was interesting was we have a trail here in Northwest Tucson called Tortolita Preserve. And it's a perimeter kind of loop around a park. And it's the same exact distance every time. It's 10 miles, essentially. And what's interesting was, before the heart attack, I was riding an acoustic bike. And the Whoop band would show me that, let's say, I would burn 600 calories, and I would take me an hour and 20 minutes to do the 10 miles. And when I did the same exact ride on an e-bike, what I learned was, if I rode the hour and 20 minutes, I would burn the same amount of calories according to the Whoop band. So just relative to itself, I would burn the same amount of calories. And if I did the same amount of time, the difference was I would go much further. So instead of 10 miles, I would have to do a second lap and do a good portion of it. So in that same hour and 20 minutes, if I rode for an hour and 20 minutes and burned the same calories, I would have just gone about 150% of the distance. So closer to 15 miles instead of 10. And so when I saw that, okay, I debunked any myth that I wasn't getting a workout, and that it just had more to do with if I invested the same amount of time in the activity, whether I was going faster and further. The truth of the matter was I was doing about the same amount of work from a physical exercise.
Yeah, now here in Tucson, the downhills are so chunky, you're still using so much of your whole body in mountain biking to where you're still getting a workout and still having the fun part of it.
Yeah. Now, I will say that there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, that when you ride an e-bike, it is a million miles an hour.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of my friends call it smiles for miles.
Yeah, smiles for miles. I mean, there's no part of a trail now that isn't fun. Every uphill is fun. Every downhill is fun. So there's that. But I would definitely say that one of the things that impresses me about e-bikes and why I think they have such a special, important place going forward in the mountain bike community is keeping people out and involved and engaged in an outdoor activity much longer than maybe they might have. I know
it's not only just a physical aspect of it, but the mental aspect, that if you do have some type of physical disability, injury, whatever, just to be out on the trails, socializing, the mental part of it is such a big part of that as well.
Well, I don't think I'm overstepping any bounds here by saying that David Kern, my friend who popped in the channel here, I'm not sure if he's still here. He would admit that he's a good bit older than I am. I won't say ages or what have you, but it's and he wears it very well. And one of the great things about that, the fact that both of us are on e-bikes most of the time. I know he has some acoustic bikes as well, but we enjoy riding together at the same, we can keep up with each other and we can do the same trails and enjoy the same experience. And, we're a good bit of difference in age. And it's just, what's so fun about that is that, there's just really no end to who can enjoy mountain biking and for how long and into life they want to with say mountain bike, with e-bikes. So I think they're here to stay. And I think what really needs to happen probably is a progression of the legislation, and
which takes just
it just takes time, and it takes
snail's pace.
Yeah, and the manufacturers need to continue to work with local authorities and what have you to just prove that they're not doing trail damage. It's riders do trail damage, not bikes.
Well, right? I've been riding, so I was out of riding for just a little bit, and I had talked about you before, backstage, that from pretty much December to April, I only did like 3 rides, and I've done 7 rides in the last 10 days. But I could see when out riding Fantasy Island bunny trails, you could see where people were riding it during the rain, and it's kind of rutted up, and that probably needs to be fixed by the trail maintenance, SDMB, at some point. But that was just because of the rain. It had nothing to do with because of the e-bikes.
Right. Yeah, that could be any bike. Yeah. And so I think that it's just going to take a lot of time for the authorities and for the lawmakers and for the trail builders to just all.
And like I mentioned before, most of the enforcers of that, for the class 1 only e-bikes, they could pretty much, for the most part, care less.
Well, I think that the lack of enforcement is certainly in our local area here in the Tucson area, the lack of enforcement or resources given to enforcement is at least an indication as to how much general concern there is for it, or maybe the concern is high and just the enforcement.
And you're always going to have those ones that are just against it, and it's a very minute, very small selection of riders and people, but for the most part, it's fine, I think.
Yeah, my personal experience has been that probably a lot like any sort of gun control conversation where, it's not the gun. I think the saying is guns don't kill people, people kill people.
Yeah, exactly.
Mountain bikes don't do damage on the trails, people do damage on the trails. And I think, my personal feeling about it is the most damage I've ever seen on a trail is from horses. And it's not that horses themselves are bad, but like if you
They're
talk
heavy.
about, they're heavy. Well, but if you talk about doing something when the trails are wet,
Yeah.
you know, like with the mountain biking community in our local area is very keen and aware of the idea that riding trails when they're wet is problematic. But I don't see the same. I don't see the same awareness and general concern from the equestrian community. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I don't want to upset equestrian people here, but what I can say is that the most damage I personally witness on the trail, it happens from horses, for better or for worse. I mean, so the mountain bikers, a mountain biker is going to damage a trail, whether he's riding, can choose to damage the trail, whether he's riding an e-bike or a non-e-bike. And I've seen plenty of fast guys be faster on the trails than people on e-bikes. That's the speed.
Yeah. Some of those.
Speed. I mean, I've seen, plenty of acoustic riders cruising by it way faster than they should. So I love what Marty Richards here said, that they've got an 84-year-old e-biker that can hang with all the fast riders in the group. I'm not sure what area of the country he's in, but maybe
that goes with keeping up with the young bucks, and still having that social aspect, the mental aspect of it too. Because being out there on the trails, for most people, I would think like it's such a mental health thing for most people, to where like, hey, this is great for my mental health. But 84 years old, not generally going to keep up with, say, a 24-year-old. But on an e-bike, kind of balances the difference.
Yeah, it surely does. That's been my experience, and I think that.
And I kind of want to, like, we've been on the e-bike thing for a while. So we're going almost to an hour and a half. I want to get on just a couple other topics.
Yeah, let's finish up.
So what is some of the events planned for Old Pueblo MTB? I know I've seen an events page that there is a Angel Fire Bike Park event coming up.
Yeah, for sure. There is a Father's Day trip currently planned to Angel Fire, New Mexico. I think you told me that it was about a 10-hour drive from the Tucson area.
Yeah, when I did it, it was about 10 hours or so.
Yeah, so one of the things that we definitely have some people in the group that want to do traveling outside of Arizona to do some riding. There's great stuff all across our state. We've done rides. You and I have even been up to Flagstaff together to ride Schultz Creek, and we've done some Sedona stuff, which is not too far north of Phoenix, which is only about three hours from us.
Sedona is an amazing place, by the way.
Yeah,
and it's up there about every year to the Sedona Mountain Bike Festival. Incredible. Yeah. That's a whole other podcast as well.
Yeah, when it's not too hot in Phoenix, there's some great trails in Phoenix. My two favorite are the Hawes Trail System, and I love Brown's Ranch. It's just like Disneyland. But so there are people who want to travel outside of Arizona, and so one of the things that a subset of our group, or groups of friends, have done is this downhill mountain biking at Angel Fire, New Mexico, which I want to say during the winter time is actually a ski resort. So
yes, I think it is.
Yeah, so they've got ski lifts, and that's kind of the bike park style experience. So there's going to be a trip in June over Father's Day for that, and then we've got a really good relationship going with a local bike shop here called Guru Bikes. Dane Higgins,
which is on your shirt, by the way.
they're when this is the Guru suspension logo, but they've since created an actual bike shop called Guru Bikes. And Dane, along with his partner Tyler, and I think they've got a couple other guys there that are really all about making that a reality. They just did a trip to Moab, and so we'll typically kind of post their rides and allow, and several of our people are not only customers of Guru Bikes but are also members of Old Pueblo, and so they just did Moab, and we've got the trip to Angel Fire, New Mexico, and then we have some really good friends, the Nords, Eric and Tina, who are camp stewards last summer they spent time in Mammoth, California, and there was a group that went out to see them. I think they're over in Colorado now this summer, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's southern Utah or whatever. But at any rate, they'll usually, wherever they end up, they'll probably draw a group of people up to. So we definitely do some travel, and I mean, we're fortunate enough in this area to have some really great mountain biking relatively close by. I mean, Moab's not too terribly far away. You got obviously Sedona, you got the mountain bike park in Angel Fire, and then I know right here in our own state, you've been a humongous supporter. And
Yes, and
oh,
I kind of want to do a podcast with some of the personnel out at Sunrise Bike Park,
that'd be
which
a
is
great
the only lift access bike park in Arizona. Now, I will say I've rode with quite a few people here in Tucson that still have this mental what they think is what is Sunrise, what it used to be. Now, in the last couple of years, Sunrise Bike Park has done a lot of things. They're not quite at the level as Angel Fire, but they are getting there. They're starting to get there for sure. With the machine built flow trails, Jaage, and they built another that's a green / blue. They built a jump line there, machine built jump line, and a slalom course. So most of the riding that was there once upon a time was completely natural trails, like kind of like Mount Lemon with a lift, but without the steep, punchy climbs, all downhill. And they've updated their lift system. So it used to be a wonky upside down bike loading system. Now it's a 3-tray loading system, like Angel Fire has or used to have. And they've done some incredible things out there. And I've done some videos on YouTube videos on what their trails were. And I did an update video on what their trails are now and what they're trying to do even more so, making it more like Angel Fire. And they're not quite there yet, but they are on their way, I think.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and that's a whole lot closer, right? I want to say,
well, yeah. So
5 hours
from Tucson, it's about 4 hours, 4.5
Yeah.
hours versus a 10-hour drive to Angel Fire.
Yeah.
So once they get to that level, so they generally, because it's so further south than some of the other lift access bike parks, they generally open up a week or two before most of the other lift access bike parks, because out here in southern Arizona, our weather gets much nicer sooner. So it is a ski resort as well. So, they're, and this time frame, their snow is still up there, but in May it'll start to melt. And usually their opening weekend is Memorial Weekend.
Well, and Phoenix is the 5th largest city in the nation, and at somewhere approaching 6 million people. There's a whole lot of mountain biking community in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And if you're in Phoenix, you're only 2 hours. You're only 2.5 hours.
Yeah. So like from say like Apache Junction area, you can get there pretty quick, compared to like Angel Fire, or out to say the bike parks in California. But I will say, so because they open up before all the other bike parks generally, they have riders come down from California, over from California, down from Colorado, New Mexico, because usually they're the first ones that open.
That's cool. Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to see about Arizona's only lift access bike park, you can go to the Trail Monster YouTube channel, and I have a couple videos on it. And I kind of want to make one additional video before the park opens up here at the end of May of what you should probably bring up there, because it is kind of different from the other lift access bike parks that are in the country.
So what's the exact name of the park? How would you find it online?
Sunrise Bike Park.
Sunrise Bike Park in Arizona.
Yeah, and so I had an impromptu event up there with Old Pueblo MTB. I was just going up there one weekend, and I said, hey, I put it on the Old Pueblo Facebook page, and there was some riders that went up there. Now, I will say it is not the best bike park for beginners.
Yeah.
You should probably be a pretty decent intermediate rider. I would say if you can ride Bug Springs or Molina Basin comfortably, it's the bike park for you. now, but where Angel Fire, like I was telling you before we had a conversation, where they have some more basic beginner trails. So if you are a beginner, you can go up there. Now, I will say Sunrise they're trying to get to that level to where they're trying to make trails that are beginner friendly. And so they used to have a lift, and I didn't see it running a lot last year, to where it only goes up. It's a secondary lift that only goes up halfway up the mountain to where it goes down the green trails.
Got it.
Last year, I didn't see it running as much. So you can go online to Sunrise Bike Park Resort, and you could see a live feed of the lift. So I would have friends that would go up there, and I would actually watch them live feeds of like, hey, them getting off the lift, and you could see the conditions and all that. And you could see like, hey, that secondary, like small lift wasn't running all the time, but that probably had to do with manpower issues, whatever. But all that to say, like from what they was, say 5 years ago to now, is almost night and day. Now they still got some work to do, but they're getting there for sure. And I would love to do a podcast. I talked to some of the individuals up there before that does some of the trail maintenance up there. They went from one guy doing all the trail maintenance. Imagine like a massive bike park, and there's like one or two guys like doing the maintenance on all the trails, to where I think they have more of a crew now that maintains all that. That's
great. Yeah. Well, those trips are fun. I'm hoping to be on that Angel Fire trip and on Father's Day weekend. So that'll be my first experience with the downhill park like that. So I'm looking forward.
Oh, you're going to have so much fun. Yeah. And I wish I could go to that. I'm not sure. I'd have to see. It's probably not in the cards for me, but because I have been there and I have done a video on it. And you can check that out, and you can kind of see, like, anybody that is in the Old Pueblo MTB community, they can go onto my YouTube channel and see, like, I stayed at the, because they have ski lodges up there, Airbnbs. We stayed, and literally 90 seconds from the ski lift, wow. From the mountain bike lift.
That's cool.
So we're at over an hour and a half. I want to just ask you just a couple things to wrap up here.
Sure.
We're actually doing pretty good on our retention rate. I'm seeing like who's still in the still watching live, and we're nice. Doing pretty good. So you talking and kind of helping me with the podcast here has been a great thing. So I'm almost to the end of my notes here. Yeah.
Glad to help you carry be the first guest. I think you said I'm officially the first guest.
Yeah, you are definitely my first podcast guest. And I'm going to go just through my notes. Anything that you want to add? I know we talked about, hey, Johnny, I see you still there. Anything that you want to add to, or whatever that you want to highlight that we haven't highlighted yet?
Yeah, no, I think the big thing I'd love to leave people with is really my passion for being involved in Old Pueblo and connecting people. Is that, mountain biking is a hobby and a sport and an exercise opportunity, and it's a great thing that connects people with like-minded adventures. And I think that one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is going on a group ride with people they don't know. And I would generally say that group riding provides a lot of opportunity for you to have an experience at a place that you've never been with people who have been there ahead of you, and an opportunity to get to know people that you might create tremendous friendships with. And so my encouragement is, and what we really aim to do in Old Pueblo MTB is just foster an environment and a place where, hey, the riding happens and people get a chance to meet other people with like-minded and common hobbies, and that you just have an opportunity to create some friendships around something that you love to do. And you're never short of people to ride with, and when you've created a group of friends. And so we've got so many people in our community that have just grown tremendously just by coming on group rides, meeting a lot of people, and have flourished and become ride leaders themselves. My friend Amanda, who I mentioned.
Yeah, and I know you had mentioned that in the other podcast. And I
Yeah.
kind of had that in my notes of like, hey, somebody that was a beginner that is now leading rides.
Yeah, I mean the progression I think really is just, someone who gets a chance to experience a group ride, go on, get into the group, become friends with people, go on lots of adventures, and then feeling comfortable leading a ride themselves. And Amanda just happens to be one of the best case studies on how that went down, and she knows this, and she's a dear friend. And so just my encouragement, what I leave people with is, hey, not only is it important to be someone who can go check out, a group ride and enjoy it with others, but be someone who invites people on a group ride. Be the one that creates the group ride that invites people to hang out. So most of our rides are no drop, and what that means is that a no drop ride means that no one's left behind. That if that however many people start the ride are hopefully the number of people that finish the ride.
Well, yeah, you hope.
Unless you bend a wheel or have a mechanical like you did in that particular ride you were referring to earlier, Neil.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, we like the idea is that you get a chance to experience the ride and be there from beginning to end, and no one gets left behind. And so just don't hesitate to go on a group ride. Go check it out. Go find one in your area. And if you and a group of friends are doing a ride and you're open to others joining you, and you've got a community like Old Pueblo MTB in your area, post the ride. There's a lot of people that will not go riding unless there's a ride they can go and be a part of. And so creating that environment where people can go and join those rides is really key.
And I know we kind of talked about it before, but Old Pueblo MTB is the inclusivity of that group is just second to none. Second to none.
Yeah, and that starts with our wonderful leaders, right? And the people that are a part of our community. I mean, I happen to start a couple of those group rides, but certainly, I'm only a small cog, in the whole system, where we've got just wonderful people who've stepped up. And whether I've asked them to do it and they were a little bit uncomfortable at first, or they've grown into a level where they'd said, hey, I want to lead a group ride. Or if I couldn't ride on a given Saturday, someone will say, hey, I'm going to go riding on Saturday, let's post my ride. And I was like, great. So it's
yeah, and I've hit you up before too, like, hey, I'm available to do a snack tin event. Do you mind if I post on the page, the Facebook page, just on the events page, and be like, hey, and some of it, sometimes it's last minute, but always it's like, yeah, sure, yeah, just do your thing, and that's what we do.
Cool. Yeah, no, I'm glad to be an inspiration, as your friend at Mountain Bike Q&A said. I just like to say that, just sometimes just doing something can be an inspiration, and that's sometimes it can be as easy as that. And, I don't fancy myself as anyone special other than, just I love to connect people and invite people to be a part of things and to have a community. And so I think if I can inspire you guys here to start a group ride in your area, if it's just a couple of you friends on a Wednesday night want to go on a night ride, and just open it up to other people, and you might find that before long, there's a group of 25 of you getting together, and some of you want to ride a harder ride and some of you want to ride an easier ride. And
and not only does it necessarily have to be a group ride, sometimes that people get to know each other through the group rides and be like, hey, I'm going to ride on a Tuesday for whatever reason. So maybe those two people meet up on a group ride and be like, hey, we kind of have the same schedule. We can do, not necessarily a group ride, but just meet up, as friends.
Yeah, I mean, right. A lot of riding together is as simple as schedules meshing and, being equally available, right? So sometimes it can be as simple as that. Your best riding buddies are just people who can ride at the same time as you. And sometimes it is just going to a group ride and meeting someone that, oh, you live on my side of town. You can ride on a Tuesday night. Great. And yeah, like you're saying, it could just be a couple of you going on a Tuesday night because you met at a group ride. That's really how a lot of the stuff happens. Like when I said, hey, I can ride weekdays between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m., and I live in this area, there was 5 or 6 other people in my area that were like, oh, I can ride then too. And that's when I want to ride. And let's go ride Honeybee. we all live within 5 minutes of Honeybee, and on a Tuesday morning from 5 to 7 a.m., we sneak in a ride before work, and that only happens because we all kind of knew each other around the Old Pueblo mountain biking group, and it was like, hey, who lives within 5 minutes of Honeybee? And it was like 10 people raised their hand, and who wants to go riding in the mornings? And it's like, oh yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. And I have met so many people through the Old Pueblo MTB community, just, taking a chance, meeting up with you guys and being like, well, am I going to be included? And, and I want to do a whole other video about how my YouTube channel kind of came to be how it is today. And a lot of the subscribers actually came from because of doing Old Pueblo MTB and doing those videos, and then like help growing that community along with you and everybody else. It's like, oh, all of a sudden, like, went from like 100 subscribers to, I'm still small and I haven't done a lot of videos lately, but I plan on getting back into it just because like I'm finally getting the creative mind back to do it. And some of the videos I do are more involved than just a POV video. I could do a POV video and put that out, and that's pretty easy. But the Old Pueblo MTB community is so large and so instrumental and helping not only the mountain biking community, but just doing that. Those I forget what the event was called, but where we built up the bikes.
It was called Bikes for Change. It was
Bikes for Change. Yes,
it was an initiative by a local group based around El Tour de Tucson, where they had all these bikes given for underprivileged kids and family members, and they needed assembly teams, and so our group stepped up and we assembled, I think, 125 bikes. The first year we did
within a couple hours.
We had a team of anywhere from bike shop owners to mechanics to people who tinker to people who were willing to break down cardboard boxes. But one of the ways we gave back was, and we've continued to do so with the Tucson Refugee Ministry, was with a bike grant that they were given, is they just needed people to put together bikes, and we've stepped up and did those, and those were some of our give back events. So we've been blessed with an opportunity to give back and do something fun and special, as a group, and not just go and ride ourselves, but so those have been some ancillary benefits of a group of our size, and as you say, influence and instrumental activities here in this area. So
Johnny's asking, you see the question here in the chat.
Yeah. Where can I sub and follow Old Pueblo? So the best thing you can do if you want to stay abreast of what we've got going on in Old Pueblo MTB is the Facebook page. And I know not everyone uses Facebook. Fortunately, most people over the age of 30 are using Facebook. So if you
it is great for the group events like this.
Say again.
It is great for like group events like this.
Yeah. So one of the things you can do, if you just go to Facebook and search for Old Pueblo MTB, like short for mountain biking, is you can find us on Facebook and just request to join. We pretty much, there's a quick 3-question answer deal where you just tell us that you're essentially not a robot, and we'll let you in. And then what's great about that is you get a chance to see how the community members interact. You get a chance to see what we post for events, and some of that may just inspire you to do something like that in your area. Like you're like, wow, these guys in Tucson, they're just riding a lot, and this is what they're doing.
A whole lot.
Yeah, we ride a whole lot. And so, if nothing else, you just might get a few ideas as to what we're doing and how you might want to do it. Like one of the fun things we did is we did a squirt gun battle ride on it's really hot here over 4th of July. And so we did a ride
115 plus.
115 on 4th of July. So on 4th of July weekend or whatever it was, it might have been the actual day, 4th of July. We did a mountain bike ride where everyone brought squirt guns and water cannons, and we got soaked riding. No one was upset getting soaked, when it was 115 degrees out. So that was a fun event we did where, we just had a ton of people show up, and anytime you were riding by another rider on the trail, you just squirt them with a squirt gun. It was hilarious. So that was just some funny thing we could do in our area that was well received.
Awesome. I thank you so much for being my first ever guest on this podcast.
Yeah, man.
We'll see. Like, I plan to do a few more if I can get some guests. I want to do at least 10, get at least 9 more guests and see where it goes. And I was inspired by my buddy here that's been in the chat here, Johnny U, Mountain Bike Q&A. And he wasn't in here tonight. I'm sure he'll eventually watch it. Mark Hill. With the segment podcast. And I want to mention the names of the Mountain Cog. See, I'm going to put it in the chat here. Cog.
Yeah, Mountain Cog podcast.
Short cog.
Yeah. So Mountain.
Yeah, and there was lots of great episodes on there. I happened to be featured on episode 68, which was published on March 10th.
Yeah, and I have. And thank you so much when you shouted out my YouTube channel on that podcast.
Yep.
It was at that time, it was with Dane Higgins and I think Josh Anderson. And I believe their other host before that, before he kind of retired from it, was Mike Festerling, I think is in my notes.
Yeah, I think Joshua and Mike were doing it together, and then Mike moved along, and Joshua appointed Dane Higgins, owner of Guru Bikes, as the other anchor point co-host. So, and then I happen to be a guest, and they've had many guests on there. They've done a lot of podcasts, so there's great topics in there. But my episode was called it was the Old Pueblo MTB, the Travis Williams episode number 68. But at any rate, it's super fun. I appreciate being a guest on.
And for all the people that, I see there's still some people in the live stream still. From our first ever podcast went okay. I had some technical issues, like getting up on the YouTube page that I'm going to try to correct before the next podcast, and even to try to find the next guest. But all of you that has been in the podcast, giving us questions and comments in the chat, thank you so much. And Travis, thank you so much for being my first ever guest on a podcast. Hopefully it went okay. There's these things are always like, your first time of anything, never goes, whether it's mountain biking or life or whatever you want to, dive into. Like your first time is, sometimes it's just growing pains. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. I think we survived it well, and we got a lot of good people that have stuck with us through it, and super glad to see my friend David Kern pop in and say hi. And
hi Dave.
So
yeah,
cool.
and a few of my friends and some of the guys that have popped in, some of the podcasts that we kind of frequent and make comments on. And is there any other thing that you want to add? I know we're like almost at 2 hours. We're going to truly end it here in just a second. Yeah. So we had talked about earlier is like, you think we can go an hour? We're almost at 2 hours.
Yeah. No, I knew that I've never been accused of brevity. No, that's a great. I just really appreciate being here. I think that we've got a wonderful community, and if I can leave anyone with the encouragement of reaching out in their own local area and either finding group rides or helping create group rides, that's really the where it's at for me.
All righty. Thank you, brother, so much.
Yeah.
You are awesome, Mr. Captain Enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. And I hope to see you on the trail soon.
Yeah, man.
Whether it's down Fantasy Island, up at Honeybee, we'll have to get together. Like I said, I'm back riding more than I have in the last few months. So we'll get together. We'll get together and do a ride.
Place when Trail Monster's on the trails.
Yeah. So, and before it gets too hot, I'm planning maybe to do a snack tin event at Fantasy Island. I'll get with you and we'll make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to have you on the May 27th event down there at Fantasy. So I'll reach out to you and just make sure you're welcome on that.
Oh, awesome! Thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure. And I'm gonna just fade it out with some music here.
Love it. Can I dance?
Okay.
I don't hear the music, but I can dance.
All right, you got the music? You got the music?
Let's do it. I don't hear it, but I'm dancing. All right, guys. Thanks for
All
joining
right,
us.
thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next show.
Mhm.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next show.